This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we have a guest who has had a massive impact within the fantasy football industry since he arrived on the scene. These days, you can find him hosting Dynasty Diehards on Razzball and contributing at Fantasy Pros. It's the one and only Nate Polvogt. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Kevin, thank you so much for having me. I've been watching all these other people on here, and I've been a bit jealous. They're great episodes, so I'm just really stoked to be here.
Thrilled to have you here. I love, everything you've been doing in the year, over the years in the fantasy community. And so it's awesome to have you on here. I want to dive right in, just kind of find out where your passion for sports originated from. I guess are you originally from Colorado?
Yes.
Okay,
Born and raised. I've been in Denver since 1982. Those were some rough early years as a sports fan. But my household was always a sports house. My dad, a huge sports fan. We didn't have a baseball team here, so I had a Red Sox affiliation very young, which has been interesting to explain to people in my older years. But I stuck with them because, let's be honest, who's a Rockies fan, right?
Yeah.
So, and that kind of sums up what it was like to be a sports fan. It was painful in Denver for a long time, but we were so hardcore. My dad is a graphic designer, and he would paint these intricate posters to put in our front window for every Super Bowl. And obviously, Of course, we burned him after because we kept getting our ass kicked. But we were a sports household. I started playing sports at a young age. I started playing baseball in second grade, basketball in third grade. I played volleyball. We were just an active sports household, I guess.
Nice. I can relate to a lot of that. As a Seahawks fan, being in the division of the Broncos back in the day.
Yes.
I mean, there was no one we hated more than John Elway, in the 80s, just because, I mean, he was so talented, the biggest arm you can get, but he was so frustrating because he was so mobile and he always hurt us. Right. So growing up, the Broncos Busters signs, like a huge part of everything. I mean, obviously we got our revenge at some point later on, which was nice. But yeah, I definitely can see that. And then the funny thing is when you said your Red Sox, I grew up in Seattle, and my brother, like in the 80s, he's a couple years older than me. He adopted Wade Boggs as his guy. So my whole life, like he was just obsessed with the Red Sox. When we collected cards, the only cards he would take would be Wade Boggs cards. So he has binders and Wade Boggs cards. So grew up hating the Broncos.
That's awesome.
And appreciating the Red Sox to a certain degree. So I love it. What were your favorite memories? What's your all-time favorite sports memory?
So I have two. The first one, as a Red Sox fan, obviously is going to be the 2004 series. Watched it with my dad. But the World Series isn't the best part of that whole journey. It was coming back from 3 games down against the Yankees and watching that whole series. Excuse me. I don't think I'll ever see anything like that again. Every baseball season I watch that 4 days in October, 30 for 30 that ESPN did. And I'm not going to lie, Kevin, I cry a little bit. It tears up because, like, my dad had been a fan since the 60s. He grew up listening to Carl Yastrzemski play and feigned sickness for this. I think it was the 67 series with the Cardinals and the Red Sox, so he could listen to it on the radio. So I just had this like romantic idea of what this organization was. And we were the lovable losers for so long. In those late 90s, we had gotten so close a couple of times with Jimmy Williams, and then to get Terry Francona in there to win one and to be able to replay that and like just replay that memory in my head. I think that's my number one, but real close. The 1994, the catch in Ann Arbor, CU, the tip play, Michael Westbrook in the back of the end zone. I hadn't watched most of the game. My dad had a TV, little black and white set up on the porch. We're outside. I was doing what kids do, playing football with my friends. My dad yells, "Get over here. You've got to see this." So I run over and I watched the play happen, and I will never forget that moment. My dad was running around the backyard screaming because CU wasn't supposed to beat Michigan. Michigan was the far superior team. This wasn't supposed to happen. They'd been down most of the game. And for that just like miracle tip to happen, gives me goosebumps right now just thinking about it. So, those are my 1A and 1B.
I love it. I mean, sports does that to you. I can definitely relate to those kind of experiences. But yeah, I mean that there's nothing like that baseball postseason, and then to be cursed like that for 100 years and or nearly and to have that type of victory, I can see why that would be special to you. And then obviously sharing special memories with your dad, that kind of moment. I mean,
Yeah,
you can't
absolutely.
forget that kind of stuff.
No,
Now,
you can't.
what's the worst loss you ever experienced as a sports fan?
Oh man, I hate that I have to relive this, but 2013 AFC divisional wild card game, actually. Nope, divisional, because the Broncos did have a bye that year. This is our year after the pain of like 13 years of terrible quarterbacks succeeding John Elway. We got Peyton Manning, 13-3 heading into the playoffs. And Raheem Morris can't just play it safe. He has to go up in the air for that Hail Mary from Flacco to Jacoby Jones. Ties the game
Yeah,
with
that was
41
brutal.
seconds left. Goes to a second overtime. Tucker wins it. That hurt.
Yeah, that was a
That hurt.
shocker. Yeah, I can remember that game.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah.
But obviously, and then I thought you might say the Seahawks. I mean, in honor
That one's
of the next Super Bowl, but it was a game. You tell me your experience with that game.
so we had actually, it's funny, we had a bunch of friends over for the AFC Championship and they kind of trashed our house after the game. And we're like, we're not doing this for the Super Bowl. But they're already making plans to come over. So we flew to Napa, where my wife's sister lives, to watch the game. We made these custom hoodies with iron-on stuff with logos. And we're really excited. And we turned the game off at halftime. It's like, this is over. This hurts. I can't do this. We turned it back on a couple other times. We played Monopoly. That was painful, but we hadn't really brought anything else to wear. And it was cold because we thought the Broncos are going to win, right? So I've got this hoodie. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Well, we went wine tasting the next day at a table full of Seahawks fans.
The worst.
Well, they were gracious-ish, but I get it. Like, I get it. I just, for us to have to sit there with the Seahawks fans, they're in all their Seahawks gear. And it's like,
Of course.
just a reminder. We left town for this.
Yeah, but the coolest thing.
We were in wine country.
There you go. Yeah, that's funny. But I mean, you got your Super Bowl 50, right?
We did.
I feel like it's easy to kind of like poke fun a little bit because the Broncos succeeded. They got their Super Bowl 50. Special, but obviously Seahawks holding on to our one championship. It was pretty awesome. But who are your favorite players like growing up? I mean, I guess you got Steve Atwater in the background. Who are your favorite players on the sports teams?
Steve Atwater, obviously. Here's one. John Elway, living in Denver. How could you not be? Roger Clemens was my guy until he wasn't, for obvious reasons. Sure. I was a big Wade Boggs guy when I was a kid, and this is gonna age me, but I really liked Dan Issel when I was a kid.
Okay,
big Dan Issel fan, and then later Dikembe Mutombo. Those were my Mount Rushmore of favorites as a kid.
That's great. I can now, with the Sonics, all I see is that big finger, right? We were the ones
absolutely.
Mutombo shut us out. So that I just love all these memories. And you mentioned Elway and Atwater. I turned around on Elway once you guys left the division.
Sure.
I think their run
gets a little easier,
for sure. And Terrell Davis and it's crazy to think like Ed McCaffrey. Like a lot of people don't even realize like Christian McCaffrey came from a stud, wide receiver, right? Like, so good stuff. Good stuff for sure. When did you first discover fantasy sports?
So in 1992, my dad was working for EchoStar, which is now Dish Network. They had a work league and they just needed one more person to make it 12. I said, okay. I mean, I watch football with you every Sunday anyway. I know what's going on. So I played. And we would, because he was the commissioner, we would score together every Monday night. We'd sit and we watch Al Michaels, Frank Gifford, and Dan Deerdorf on Monday Night Football in the Yellow Jackets. And we would hand score everybody's rosters in pencil going through the paper. So that was the first time I played, and I've played every season since. Wow. I have not taken a year off. Yeah. It's just gotten worse over the last 4 years. I found all this other fun stuff to do, all the stuff that's emerged and become legal here that we can do now. And yeah.
Game changer for sure. But back in the day, I mean, I started playing in 95. So, it's a different time, when you had to do everything on paper and, call in your lineups and, it was different, but it was special. And I know it's kind of an infamous thing that your first pick was Randall Cunningham back in the day, right?
Yes.
Pretty cool.
Yes, it was.
The OG when it comes to that scrambling quarterback, for the most part.
Well,
he was special.
To be honest, I fell in love with him because he's the first person I saw play in person that wasn't a Bronco. So
Okay.
I just got to see Randall Cunningham run all over the Broncos as an Eagle, and I kind of just loved him from there, and I had to take him. It was a smart pick or not.
Nice. Now, back in the day when you first, start playing the game, maybe not 92, but a little bit later on, do you remember consuming content? Do you remember some of the people that you followed in the industry, or did you even know there was an industry out there?
Outside of the magazines that I used to read that our good friend Bob Harris produced, no, I didn't really. That was kind of the extent of it. I've always been a person that likes to take the NFL side of analysis and figure out what to do with that on my own. You can ask Jen. I've never been a person who listened to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of articles outside of like strict NFL content, though. Anything Fields Yates is on, we're pretty big fans of. Love to listen to him. If I'm going to listen to anything, that's probably where I'm going to go.
Yeah, Field is as good as it gets, and it's so cool. He's been doing it for quite some time now, but he's still like, when I think of him, I think of his like the future of ESPN. He's just so talented and does so many things, and he does things so well. And he's in the end, he's an awesome person. So easy to root for sure. So when it comes to playing the game, what do you love most about the fantasy experience?
I love that it's given me an appreciation and a reason to just mass consume football. I've always wanted this to kind of be a thing that we did. And my wife and I, Jen, have talked about this for probably a decade. Like our dream would be that we get to watch sports for a living and that's what we do. We cover sports or whatever. That makes it more fun for me. Being more involved, being able to watch all of the games, and every game means something to me on Sunday. At Jen's insistence, we have 4 TVs and a 100-inch projector in our basement so that we can watch as much football on Sunday as possible. We'll target 4 games and run Red Zone on the big TV. So, fantasy gives me a reason to do that, and it's another avenue of being involved in the sport just in general. It gives me something to think about, to study, to work my brain, setting lineups, figuring out what player's best, why are they best. And that's what I love about the analysis side of it is I get to tell people what I'm thinking now.
That's awesome. Now, do you have a primary home league you consider like your main league?
Yes, we have a league it's Jen's sister, her oldest brother, and then a bunch of friends and a couple industry people who have filled in over the last few years that we've become close with. We're going into year 14 next year.
Nice,
nice. Pretty awesome. It's been fun. I've never won it. Jen's won it 3 times. I have not.
Well, of course.
What
do you guys do live drafts? Or is it?
We used to. We can't. We're all because we've got Scott Rainier, who's up in Seattle. He's in our league now. Then we've got California. We've got Central Time people. We're spread out all over the place. I wish we could because those are so much fun. But
yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of the foundation of that league experience. I mean, you could do it without it, but it just sets the tone for the league so great. And anybody out there that's not doing live drafts, definitely encourage that. When it comes to playing the game, whether it's in a home league like that or industry leagues, do you have one person that you consider like your biggest rival? Like someone who, is it like?
No, it's Jen.
You get the most joy when you beat her, and
Well, she's my rival in that we're in like 6 leagues together, and every time that I have to play her, I cower. Well, because I know I'm going to lose. And I will say this, and I'm not afraid to say it. Jen is a better fantasy football manager than I am.
Hey, that's awesome.
She just is.
Scary,
she just
though.
is. It's scary. It's scary when you have 6 leagues with her. Yeah, right.
Yeah. you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, there she is. that's my rival.
What am I gonna do? That's why we don't. When we're playing each other, we just don't talk about that week.
When you play each other, you sleep in different bedrooms.
Yeah. So over 6 leagues, about 3/4 of the season.
I love it. Now, do you have favorite settings, favorite formats in fantasy?
I really like Superflex and tight end premium because I'm a tight end guy. So like I have a league right now. He's probably been talked about on the show, the Chaos League. It's with Kluge, Troy King, Jeff Bell. We've got a bunch of us from the old fantasy intervention days in this league. And we have to start 2 tight ends. So you don't have a choice. We have 2 solid tight end slots. And that's one of my favorite leagues to play in. I have 4 startable tight ends on that roster right now, heading into next season. So I'll generally roll out 4 to 5 tight ends every week in that league, just for fun.
That's cool. And it is fun to have different leagues, different settings, things that kind of, make keep you on your toes. I love it.
Yeah.
Especially when you're creating content. Now, you are one of the original COVID content creators. That's right, right? So talk to me about when you first decided to start creating content, what inspired all that?
So Jen and I had been talking about having a podcast. We had a very specific idea for a podcast, which we did for 1 season once we kind of got into this, but we just didn't really know how to do it prior to COVID. And I got frustrated with my Twitter account because it got really political. So I nuked it and just started a new one for strictly sports. And during COVID, there wasn't much else to do. I found myself one afternoon in June scrolling Twitter, and I saw a tweet from Seth Woolcock. No clue who this kid was, had never heard of him before. It's like, hey, I'm looking for writers for my site In Between Media. It's a mix of life and fantasy sports. If you'd be interested, DM me. I just thought to myself, I literally have nothing else to do. We are locked in our house. At the time, I was a real estate broker, so nothing was happening there. I couldn't leave. So I DM'd him. It's like, why not? I've never written anything that's been published in my life, but let's give it a whirl. Ended up talking to him, and he mentored me, taught me how to really write like a professional, which has been fantastic. And that's just kind of where it started. I mean, it was on a whim. And very unlike me, honestly, at the time, to just randomly reach out to someone and say, hey, yeah, I'd be interested in doing this and taking that leap. There was a start of something obviously really awesome. Man, I had no idea. I just thought I was going to write a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's cool. You found a good one because, I mean, Seth, love the guy. Love everything he does in the space, and his future is so bright. And so you definitely found a good fit diving into In Between. Now, obviously, you mentioned fantasy intervention. Talk to me about the journey. Fantasy intervention, IBT, Fantasy Pros, Dynasty Diehards, Razzball. Talk to me about everything you've kind of done along the way.
Oh man, it's been a lot. This is an interesting life. And Jen and I had this conversation the other day. Making it full-time in this industry is not for the weak of heart. It's tough. It takes a lot of hours and a lot of grinding, a lot of jumping around, a lot of freelancing. I was very lucky to find an initial home with a place like In Between, where we had a company structure. We had a vision. We had a voice that we were already trying to project. So we knew what we were doing. And I think that kind of gave me the wrong impression of moving into this industry full time once we decided to make that leap, because it's different. It's very cutthroat, and it's a lot of networking. It comes down to who you know. And I've been fortunate that I got in on the beginning of the whole pandemic creator explosion, and my wife and I have stuck with it. And we're both in the industry doing this together. My office is upstairs above me. It's on my couch when we both work from the couch all day on our laptops. And we just try and find anything we can. I got lucky with knowing Jeff Bell, and he has been very helpful. We came up at the same time, essentially. He helped me get in with Fantasy Pros, which has been a blessing. I'm helping them run social media, at least for the rest of this season. That's been a fantastic step into the industry. And then from there, I mean, that helped me get gigs with Razzball, where I'm kind of their lead dynasty analyst. I'm going to be covering the Senior Bowl for them down in Mobile in 2 weeks, which that I cried when I got my actual credentials. To get to that point in something that you've wanted to do for so long and pushed so hard to get, it was really surreal to me. So without Fantasy Pros, I'm not doing the Razzball thing. I had the opportunity to help Fantasy Face-Off Network run their YouTube channel, which was a massive learning experience that I will forever be grateful for, that I learned a ton this season. And that's kind of, it's a freelancing world. I've hung my hat at Fantasy Pros, Razzball, Face-Off Sports Network, IBT. Those are my main ones. I've done stuff for The Lateral with our boy Herms, CH Herms. I did stuff with them for a while. I did stuff for the Fantasy Collective. I wrote for Trophy Smack for a little bit, that was fun. That's a fun group with Chase Vernon and Kelly and all of them, and Mike Fiella. I did some sleeper content last year on their app, did some videos for them, that was pretty surreal too, getting to do that and getting to do that level of video content. It's hard for me to look back. It's hard for me to look back on it sometimes just because I've done so many different weird things. And I'm 41 years old, and thinking about all the things I did even before I was in this industry, and now getting to live my dream. And while it can be frustrating and it can be tough, and you can get really easily burnt out on football, especially when you get into this time of the year and you're still having to grind on rookie film and, talking about free agency. And sometimes you just want to take a break. I remember I could be working outside of my home. I could still be doing real estate. And that's a grind that I don't miss. I managed a wood shop for 5 years, refinishing antiques. That was horrible. I could still be doing that. Ultimately, this is a dream, and how I got here, it doesn't really matter at this point. I'm just stoked to be here, and I'm going to keep doing it until they tell me I can't do it anymore or the NFL folds, I guess.
I love it. No, you're the king of fantasy freelance at this time. You're doing so much, have done so many places. So if anybody out there, wants to kind of go that route, because obviously it's a great path when it comes to getting exposure, networking. Talk to Nate, DM him. I'll say it.
Yeah, hit me up.
So let's talk about the fantasy community. Obviously, this kind of blends into that type of talk. Talk to me about how much the support of the fantasy community has meant to you over the years.
Oh, it's been huge. I didn't know that I could find a community like this that would be so inclusive and welcoming around a sport. I suppose that surprised me, because there's always been this perception that when you get into like hardcore sports fans that we're meatheads, which I've always hated that perception, and it's ruined some friendships that I've had in the past. But to find a community that's everything that I love, plus fantasy football and sports in general, has been amazing. And then meeting some of my best friends, Herms is probably, he's up there as one of my best friends, and I met him on Twitter. And this community means the world to me. That's why we go out of our way to make sure that we go to the expo every year. It's our one chance to get to hang out with all of you in person, to get to hug you guys and high five. We don't get to do that all year. We get to see each other here, which is great. And I love my FaceTime with my friends, and I love that we get to talk football and analyze things. Yeah, this community really honestly, to Jen and I, it means everything. It changed our life. I was in a weird way. The pandemic was dark and it was depressing. And we met a bunch of people who were in the same boat, and to be able to commiserate through all that was really mentally for us huge.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
I was just saying it's amazing just how many connections and true friendships have been made. And like I said, like you said, the expo has been super special, getting to know people, meeting people in person. Talk to me a little bit more about that expo experience that you have.
Favorite weekend of the year. Jen and I have decided it's our favorite weekend of the year. It's crazy. It's crazy getting to spend that weekend with all these people who, like I had said previously, like we spend time like this, or in Twitter DMs, or in Slack channels, or on the Twitter timeline, or however, but we don't get to see each other in person. The first year when I walked into that hotel lobby, there were 20 people from a group chat that I was in. We called ourselves the Thieves. Thick as thieves.
Yeah.
And I walked into that lobby and heard 15 people yell my name. And then I stood there for the rest of the night with that group of people. And as people came in, it was like everybody, the feeling of community at that first expo is something I don't think any of us had ever really truly felt before. And then it just carries on every year, and these bonds keep growing. We network with people. If you're someone who wants to get into this industry and you're kind of on the fence about going to the expo, definitely go. You'll walk away with a gig. It might not be a full-time gig, but you're going to get something freelancing. You can find somewhere to write, maybe to do a little bit of video content, and you'll make a ton of friends. Pat Fitzmaurice, one of my favorite people on earth. And we had talked on Twitter, but then we shared beers in person, and that's different. You get to know a person a way you can't get to know them over the internet. So yeah, you should go to the expo. And Kevin, I know you agree. It's a once in a lifetime or a once a year experience, I guess, if you keep going. But
for sure, no, it's high. I get the highest recommendation I can provide. It's get to that expo, because like you said, I mean, whether if you're looking for work, you'll find something. If you're looking for friendships, I mean, everybody's there with open arms. So I remember the last time I spoke with you, we were at Jose's Landing, and we were talking about next year's expo, and there was some doubt if you guys are going to make that happen. Has there been some changes in that on that front?
Well, the thing that's tough, so our kid is 6, started first grade this year. We got back from the expo on Monday. We landed, her parents picked us up, took us to get him from their house. We had to go straight to his school for an ice cream social because he starts school the next day.
Oh man.
So that was kind of where we're like, oh man, this might be too much, too tough. Then we got home and realized, but he gets to spend that whole like 5 days with grandma and grandpa. They get him ready for school. They love every second of it. And our best friends are all in Canton for a weekend and we're not going to go. So we're going.
I love it because I remember Jen was like, no, it's not happening. Yep. So this is great. Great news to hear. Breaking news on this podcast.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah. Don't underestimate the difficulty of going from kindergarten to first grade. It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
It'll mess with you. So
yeah,
no, great decision. Like you said, it's the best weekend of the year. So happy to hear that. Let's dive into some rapid fire questions. I'll throw out some questions. Just give me quick answers that come to mind. What do you love most about the fantasy community?
The inclusiveness and the friendships, the bonds that we've all made. It's pretty incredible.
Truly. What's been the biggest challenge for you thus far in this journey?
The desire to find a full-time place to hang my hat so I'm not all over the place. I've gotten close a couple of times. I just want to find that one home.
Nice. What do you enjoy most about what you're doing in the industry right now?
I've gotten into graphic design lately and video editing, which I've really enjoyed. That was a big step for me. Having a dad who's a graphic designer and feeling wholly unartistic was really hard for most of my life. But I found that artistic side. So that's been fun. And pushing into that's really helped me get some other gigs too. So
I love it. That's awesome. Now, what's your Super Bowl prediction this year? AFC, NFC, who's winning it all?
So because my sister-in-law's boyfriend is doing a private tasting for Brock Purdy today in the Valley, I'm going with 49ers.
There you go.
49ers over Chiefs.
Over Chiefs. Okay.
Chiefs.
The AFC playoffs is so fascinating because, Chiefs struggling as much as they have forever. And then you got the Bills kind of coming back to the fold and Baltimore looking strong. So, and obviously Miami's a wild card. So you're going Chiefs. I like it. What are your favorite hobbies outside of fantasy sports?
Hiking
activities
is a big one.
Okay.
Hiking. That's about all we have time for. Hiking, and binge watching shows. We watch a lot of Netflix, Hulu at night to just kind of unwind.
What's your favorite show?
Oh, that's tough. All time?
All time.
Probably Dexter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How about what's your favorite movie of all time?
Oh man, that's really tough. Favorite movie of all time. Comedy's going to be Deadpool.
Okay.
Favorite movie of all time though? Man, I don't know. That's I don't know. That's really tough.
We can take a pass. How about a sports movie?
Favorite sports movie?
The Natural. Sports movie? Yeah. The Natural. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Did you watch the Pete Carroll press conference? He had a little reference.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, someone asked him like, what did you want to be known for? Something like that. And he says, well, what I wanted was for them to say, there goes Roy Hobbs, the best there ever was. Something like that. So
that's awesome. I love that.
It was pretty good. What's your favorite place to go on vacation?
Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And it's not even close. Yes.
Really? Yeah. You prefer the Pacific side over the Atlantic side?
Yeah. So we go there once a year. In 2021, we stayed there for a total of a month.
Oh, wow.
So eventually we're planning on moving there. When that's going to happen, I don't know, but eventually we're going to move down there. So
creating fantasy football content, living in Puerto Vallarta. Hey, that's a good goal. I love it.
In 2021, on one of those trips, I was on the Scott Fishbowl Podathon live from Mexico, like 1 a.m, but still. So
That's the life. I love it.
yeah, exactly.
What's the worst job you've ever had?
Oh, and this is going to be surprising because I worked in restaurants for about 12 years. I did some telemarketing for like 2 weeks. And I didn't really know what I was getting into. And I accidentally outed a girl to her parents because she had contributed to, and I can't remember, I think it's a human rights campaign. And I was calling for human rights campaign. And she was away at college, and her parents were like, she's at college. It's like, oh crap. And I quit after that. It's like, I'm not up for this, man. I don't like this cold calling people asking for money. And then for something like that to happen just made me feel terrible.
Oh, that's terrible. Now, what has the support of your wife meant to you over the years?
Everything. So we're 17 years together, 15 years married here in May. I wouldn't be doing any of the things I'm doing without her, especially in this industry. She's been so endlessly supportive. She's really forced me to kind of get outside of my comfort zone, not just in this, but in life in general. It's a dream to be able to work with her. We talked about wanting to do this for years, but she would go to her job, I would go to mine. And then for a long time, I was working from home when she was leaving. And in 2018, she made the decision that she wanted to work from home before we got into all of this. And I think it's the best decision she ever made, was to come, and we're together 24/7, man. It's constant support, and it's amazing. And I wouldn't change it for anything.
That's awesome. So what went into that when you guys decided to, like, let's do this full time and try to make this work? What all went into that? When it comes to fantasy, the fantasy world.
So Jen's been editing. She wants to be more on the editing side. Before we got into this industry, she was the face of the company. She was the person everyone had to talk to. She was out front of everything. So she enjoys doing more of the editing now. So she's been doing a ton of editing for Fantasy Pros. She's the managing editor for Razzball. And really, once she kind of leaned into that side of it, she found, like, give me all the work. So she just freelances and picks up as much as she can. And we got to a point, and I want to say around like June, where it's like, okay, you know what? This is actually realistic. We might actually be able to pull this off. And that's when we really started focusing on getting as much work as we can and just being absolutely 100% full-time here.
So cool. I love every part of that. That's really cool. Let's talk a little bit about the 2023 season and looking forward into the 2024 year. What are your biggest impressions from that 2023 season? What did you learn, from this season we just closed up in fantasy?
As hard as we try to know what we're talking about, and as many numbers and stats and analytics and film as we watch, it doesn't matter, because we're going to have things like Aaron Rodgers popping his Achilles 4 plays into the season. And that throws everything we knew about the Jets out the window. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, anything we thought these guys were going to do, out the window. This is an unpredictable game that we play. We do the best we can. In 2023, I think hammered that into a lot of us as analysts, where it's just so unpredictable. And this season was one of the most injury riddled that I can remember. They got to get rid of that AstroTurf, man, that fake turf. They got to get rid of it. It's just brutal on the knees and the ankles. And I think that was my biggest takeaway, is like, man, we're trying to be as prepared as we can. We go into the season as prepared as we can possibly be. We walk into drafts with all the information in front of us. We do the best we can, but at the end of the day, that's all we're doing, the best that we can. This is an unpredictable sport.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I wish I had all the answers.
I know. You got to just enjoy the ride. It's true. You spend all off season dialed in to that fantasy draft, like if it's taking place in August or whatnot. And then it's Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua, right? That take you the distance. So it's wild. It's a wild journey. And to me, I mean, that's where, like, if you're not enjoying the experience of playing the game and the fun and the league experience and the highs and lows, you're just not. You're gonna burn out. So because it's so unpredictable. Yet, obviously, any advice and content you can get out there that helps to guide you is welcome. From my perspective,
absolutely. Yeah.
So, I love content, but yeah, you're right. It's a wild to predict for sure.
It is.
Now talk to me a little bit about the Broncos. Your impression with Sean Payton, the Russell Wilson experiment, where things are going there.
I don't know, man. It's hard to have faith in this organization right now after what we've seen with Fangio and with Vance Joseph and now with Peyton. And this season with Peyton was just atrocious. We thought we were going to get something out of Russell Wilson, then we did. And then he benched him.
Yeah.
And who knows you're hearing a million different things. I try not to plug too much into local sports media here because I'm going to be honest, the ones in Denver are kind of idiots for the most part. We don't have the most intelligent, or we have shock jock. We have a lot of shock jock types. Depending on who you talk to, Russell Wilson is definitely gone, or what Peyton said the other day means that they're going to work on it with him. This is a team that's, I think you'll agree with me here. This is a team that's 2, 3, 4 years away from really actually being relevant. There's a lot of work to be done here, and they don't have a lot of cap room, and they don't have a lot of picks. So they're either going to have to fire sale, or, Peyton's going to have to work his magic in free agency and get some guys that are willing to take maybe team-friendly deals.
Yeah, it's. A trade like that is like when people say, the wrong quarterback pick or acquisition can set a franchise back. This is kind of like the gold standard in the future of how that can happen. Were you originally excited about acquiring Russ? Were you expecting greatness, or were you kind of on the fence?
I was expecting not necessarily greatness, but a lot more than what we got out of him that first season. I think most Denver fans and a lot of fantasy people too thought we're going to get a refreshed Russ in a new system, in a new city, with a new head coach, Nathaniel Hackett. We were all excited about Hackett. Like, look what he's done with this Green Bay offense. Our hopes were really high. Not necessarily Russell Wilson in his mid-20s, but you're going to get a 33-year-old version of what he was. And what we got was what I would imagine was a 43-year-old version of what he was. It wasn't pretty. We can trace a lot of that back to Hackett, but still, yeah.
It's a weird thing for us to see from Seattle, just because he was incredible here, but just the loss of a little bit of his step, quickness, mobility. Something happened to him with like maybe his finger injury. Something happened that just kind of changed his timing. Like, there's so many weird things to analyze on the Russ. We could talk for a couple hours about Russ. I could for sure, and it's as much as it was great for us to haul in a bunch of picks and all that. I feel bad for what you guys have experienced, just because it's just not what you signed up for, and hopefully it all works out for him. I saw he was just back in Seattle with Pete Carroll last night. So not that he's coming here. I'm just saying there's hope.
Wouldn't that be something?
Himself. It would be. Yeah. What if they went somewhere else? Because I wouldn't be surprised if Pete actually went elsewhere.
All right.
Went down. So we'll see. Everything's kind of up in the air. But now let's talk about your off season, right? It is the off season fantasy, but there is no off season. Talk to me about your excitement for Dynasty, for the Senior Bowl, and everything you got ahead of you.
The Senior Bowl is the most exciting thing, obviously, coming up. I still can't believe I'm going down there for a week to cover that. I'm hoping to pull a lot out of that as far as rookie drafts. I want to find some guys like the Tyjae Spears that overperform in the Senior Bowl, and they kind of bump their stock. They end up with maybe a better landing spot than they would have, better draft capital than they would have. I've really enjoyed digging into the rookie film. This is really the first season I've dug this hard into it, and that's been a blast. I broke down 14 players yesterday, so I'm taking a break today. My brain needs a little bit of a rest from film study, but and I'm looking forward to the draft. I'm hoping to maybe get down to the draft this year. We'll see if it happens. Unfortunately, not going to be able to make the combine. It's over my birthday, so I've got to stay home for that one. I'm looking forward to everything, man. I've got a full slate of stuff for Fantasy Pros I'm going to be writing here. FFPC content, which is some of my absolute favorite to write, will be coming starting March or April for Fantasy Pros. And all the Dynasty stuff. Going to start some rankings off here pretty soon for Dynasty, some tier-based rankings. I'm not a projections guy. My brain will hurt for far too long trying to do those points projections. So yeah, Jen and I might have something fun in the works. I don't want to say too much about it, but we have an idea, and it's something that might be hopefully coming around the end of June, early July.
Looking forward to that for sure. Oh, maybe I'll have you back on at that time to
absolutely
tell us all about it. I love it.
Awesome.
Is there any players in 2024 that you just you will jump ADP to acquire? Anybody you're really excited about?
Brock Purdy is one that I'm willing to kind of reach on. Roshan Johnson, I'm willing to reach on a little bit this year as well. I think he's going to take that next step in the Chicago offense, regardless of who they bring in as offensive coordinator, who the quarterback is. I'm hoping and praying that Laviska Shenault finally gets a chance. I have to you know what? I have to let that one die. I'm letting it die on this show. Kevin, I am telling you, Laviska Shenault is dead. I'm sorry, Jay Felicio. I'm sorry, but it had to be said. Laviska Shenault is dead. Yeah.
That's exciting. That's awesome. So back to like the Senior Bowl and just the, I guess the upcoming draft. Are there any players that you just can't wait to see in the NFL?
Oh, Xavier Leggett is a big one. Okay. I did an extra long film review on him yesterday. He reminds me a lot of AJ Brown, but his speed, in my notes, I wrote some words I can't say on this show about what his second level secondary speed. It's his acceleration's phenomenal. Ricky Purcell's another one. Phenomenal route runner out of Florida. I'm really excited to see what he can do. And this is going to sound weird, Kevin, but I kind of like Spencer Rattler coming into this draft. I know he's probably like third, fourth round guy, unless he does something crazy at the Senior Bowl. But I think he's a guy who could make an impact down the line. Give him a year or two behind a veteran quarterback, and maybe he gets a shot, and maybe he does something with it.
I love that you're bringing the deep dives here, because that's more intriguing than saying like Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb Williams, and Brock Bowers.
Well, we know all these guys are going to be the guy. Yeah. Like at quarterback, I'm excited to see Joe Milton. I want to see what he can do. He's kind of a more under the radar name. I mean, not that under the radar, but again, he's not Bo Nix. He's not Drake May. So
yeah, no, it's cool. And it's true. You look back on any, previous dynasty rookie draft, and it's always mind blowing to see where some of these guys went, like a Jaden, I mean, like a Puka. I mean, like it's incredible. Like some of the values that, that are there. And so doing those deep dives and finding content where you can, find those gems and take those shots is huge. So looking forward to everything you're doing with that for sure. Talk to me a little bit about your, obviously within this journey, there's got to be some people that you've obviously name dropped several people here, but some people that just had a massive impact on you along the way.
Well, the first name I want to throw out is my dude, Bob Harris. We oddly bonded over our love of heavy metal and music on Facebook before we really did anything together. He's given me the opportunity to do something that I have dreamed of doing my whole life, and being on Sirius XM radio and getting to talk football. He's just been an awesome mentor to me. And along with that, Pat Fitzmaurice, same thing. He has been such a great person to bounce things off of and talk to when I'm frustrated, and just kind of help me along, help me find my footing in this industry. And then Jeff Bell. I have to shout out Jeff, the guy who told me he wasn't going to amount to anything in this industry 3 years ago when we first met, said he didn't like doing live content, and look where he's now. Like, I'm so proud of Jeff. And he's been such a big part and such a motivation for me. Like, seeing what he does makes me want to do more. So those three people, I think they're outside of Jen, obviously.
Sure.
That's a given. Those three, and Seth, obviously, he gave me my first shot in this industry, and he really helped me learn how to be a professional writer. And that's been huge.
That's awesome. Yeah, some outstanding people for sure. You named a couple football guys in there, which is exciting. Yeah. Great, obviously, great group of people over there. What at this time in your life, what are you most grateful for?
I am grateful for my wife, my child, and my health, and the opportunity to do something that I love with a passion for a living. To be able to be on camera with people like you, Kevin, to get to talk about this game we all love, and have people actually pay me to do it, and to have a family that's so incredibly supportive of what I'm doing is just amazing.
Well, it's been fun. It's been fun to see your rise. It's great. Looking back again, like the COVID times, and so many incredible people have come into our lives just because we were hanging out on Twitter talking about fantasy football. And like I said, before, the relationships that I've kind of witnessed happen, just kind of seeing things from the outside or on the inside as well. I've made a wonderful amount of connections and relationships because of the same thing that you've experienced. It's been special. It's been so much special. It's so much fun. And again, the expo is special because we can all get over there and like enjoy some time together and get to know people better. But there's a lot of people that maybe are on the outside just kind of wanting to start creating content in fantasy, or people that have been kind of lingering around for a while, but want to dive deeper in. What advice do you have for people aspiring to get more involved in the fantasy space?
Put yourself out there. It's the only way anyone's going to find you. Look for companies. This is a great time of year. There are a lot of companies that are looking for freelance writers, someone to write like once a week, maybe a couple times a month at the most. Reach out to people. Don't be afraid to say, hey, you might not have experience, and a lot of these sites don't expect you to have experience. Don't be afraid to reach out to people who you respect in the industry. Ask them how they did it. And my DMs are always open. If you have questions about how do I do this? How do I do that? Who should I talk to? Reach out to people that you trust, people that you respect. We're more than happy to answer your questions. Honestly, we all feel lucky to be doing this, and we'd love to help other people see their dream. So
it's great advice. I mean, that's perfect. You nailed it. Obviously, we're going to wrap things up here. Was there anything you want to cover or say before we close things out here today?
I want to give a shout out to my smelly boys, Jay Felicio and Scott Rainier. God, I always want to call him Scott Difflin. He's got to change that handle. I need him to just be Scott Rainier. I've known the man for 3.5 years. I still want to call him Scott Difflin. And our boy Herms. Those are my boys, probably my tightest crew here in this industry. They've helped us. We've all helped each other out a lot in the last year and a half, 2 years. And it's been cool to watch all of us kind of rise up in the industry and do our thing. And obviously Jen, the love of my life, the most awesome person I know, helping me and standing by my side and working alongside me in this industry. It's freaking amazing. And I know I've already said all this before, but I got to say it one more time. She's amazing. And I wouldn't be able to do this without her. So,
and I'll definitely have to get her on here pretty soon, because we got to figure out how she dominates you in fantasy. Like, these are the things that people want to know. Tell the listeners and viewers where they can find your stuff.
You can find me on Twitter at Nate Polvogt. I am also on Blue Sky. I don't know if people are kind of venturing over there yet, but I'm Nate Polvogt on Blue Sky. Nate Polvogt on Threads. You can find me on Razzball, at Dynasty Diehards, on YouTube. Fantasy Pros work is coming. And if you think a tweet's funny, it was probably mine on Fantasy Pros. If it wasn't funny, then it was probably my boss, Ryan Wormley's. So
I love it. Well, there it is. That's Nate the Tank. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. It was a pleasure to have you on here, and I look forward to seeing everything you do in 2024, my man.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin. This has been a blast.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.